Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today I just want to go through the bare minimum maintenance and things you should be aware of just in case things go wrong on your tool. At least you'll be able to troubleshoot it, and hopefully you won't even need to troubleshoot it. You can stay ahead of it by just doing a little bit of maintenance along the way. I'll talk about how and why and literally pull some of these apart and show you. And to make it fit almost any tool, I've got an example here. So I've got a standard rotary tool with a flex shaft attachment and then just a flex shaft grinder. So basically a pendant motor. The more Foredom style, the more Dremel style. Now there's going to be small differences between them, and there's going to be small differences from this to a Dremel, from this to a Foredom, but in essence they are pretty much all the same, having played with a lot of them. So what we'll start off with are flex shafts in general. And for that, I think I'll just open this one up and we'll have a good look at the inside and outside of this flex shaft. So step one in all of this, no matter what you're doing, just unplug the power, take it down from wherever it's hanging, and then you're free to just double check with the switch or whatever. All good, all off. The first step is we're going to have to get the flex shaft apart. Now, on these style tools, this handpiece is fully hard fixed. So you'll see that there's no possible way, there's no retention, nothing like that. This thing is not coming off. So this is all one piece all the way up to this nut here. Whereas on the other ones, so on the pendant motors, you'll see with these, there's this little retention. So in this case, it is simply just a matter of pulling. So a good swift tug and that comes off. That is step one. Now, once you've got your handpiece off, if you need to get it off, or in this case, we're going to have to leave this one on, we're going to have to look at how it attaches to the tool itself. So to get a good eyeball on it, in most of the cases with Dremels and other rotary tools with flex shaft attachments, all you need to do is typically just twist this off. Now, once we get this off, you'll notice that this is all just connected to the outer sheath. So if you pull it back, you're going to see this is the little flex shaft cord. This is the part that's rotating. This part is fully stationary. And inside here, you've just got your standard tool. So if you weren't using it as a flex shaft, you'd have this. You'd have a different little adapter on here, which just basically covers a little bit. It's just a shroud. So now to get rid of this, you just do it the same way as what you would do with changing a normal burr. This one's got a little clip. Some of yours might have little pins that you need to put something in. And all you're going to have to do is undo that. You can see that I've only done this hand tight, and that has been perfectly fine for the entire time I've been using this. There you go. That is your flex shaft detached. Now, if instead you've got more of a Foredom or a pendant motor, you'll see here, if I rotate it down to the right side and we zoom in, you can see right there is a little Allen key grub screw. All you need to do is loosen that one out, just back it off. You don't need to do it too much. All that's doing is just pinching the rest of this sleeve outer housing is just getting pinched and held in place there. It's really not held on much, so just back that off a tiny bit. And just like the other one, this will pull straight out and expose the full flex shaft. In this case, I don't advise taking it a step further and getting the cord running down the inside off. You actually want to leave that one attached. It's just the shroud that you'll slide off. Now, one extra thing with this version, so not all of them will do this, but rather than taking off this retention just here and pulling this part off, you can actually unscrew it at the top here and pull it straight off like that. And you can see this, we're not going to detach. You can do it. So you can see there's just the same as down here. There's a little grub screw right there. So that is retaining the entire cord. But it's also the cord and this little outer sheath. So it's clamping onto a little keyed shaft coming straight down off the motor there. And one other thing we'll notice that is different between these two models, if I yank the sheath off, you'll notice that there's the cord. So this is spinning. As this spins, it's spinning the burr, but it's also got this spring over the outside. Now this spring is reducing that friction against the outer sheath, but as it's doing that, it is also the main point of friction for the entire cord. So what we want to do is take this off and just have a good inspection, have a good look along the entire length of this. It should be a little bit lubricated, but not too heavily. And you shouldn't see any particles. You shouldn't see any metal shavings, any kind of rubber, any kind of plastic from the sheath. It should be nice and clean. If it's not, clean it and then re-grease it. For all of these, I recommend re-greasing with a white lithium grease. Now, why I choose that one is because it is a little bit longer lasting and it has to be fairly heat tolerant. These are not subjected to high heat, but just a little bit of friction when you're running at a couple thousand RPM, these are rubbing against each other and any little bit of lubrication will help immensely. But if you use the wrong one and it's for low temperature work or it's too thin, it will actually get warmed up and it will dribble out the bottom end of the handpiece. So what you want to do is you want to take the whole thing out and you want to lubricate all the way down from this top end, all the way down the shaft, and then pull up maybe a hand span away from the bottom edge. So don't add any to there. Put the sheath back on, hang it up, and run it with the handpiece off for about 10 minutes. You want to go fairly moderate speed. So that's going to just rub that grease into the entire shaft along here, and it'll allow the little bit extra that you've put on to dribble out the bottom. So you want to just catch it in a bucket or some paper towel. You shouldn't have too much come out as long as you pull up short. Just don't go the entire length. So from the top here right to the tip where the handpiece is. So rather than going right to the end up here, you want to pull up and you want to go down to about here somewhere. And then when it warms, it will get a little bit thinner and it will run down and it could dribble out the back end of this. If it doesn't dribble out, don't worry about it too much. You've probably maybe put a little bit too little in, or you've just got it exactly right. But you shouldn't see it pouring out of here either. So definitely just put in enough, but not too much. And that's all you need to do for this one. Now I'll show you the other one because it's a little bit different. So in the case of a rotary tool, the more hardware style one, you'll notice now this, I have not done any maintenance on for at least a year. And you can see it is pretty much bone dry. It is definitely due for a maintenance, which is why I'm doing this video. But I'm not going to actually complete the whole maintenance because unfortunately I am retiring this machine. But have a good look. In this case, you can see there's no outer spring. So it's just this one cord running down and then you've just got this outer sheath here. Now it's got a little bit of reinforcement in it. You can feel it and you can see the little windings. So it's obviously got something in there. It's not just pure rubber. But because this is a pretty low duty, not heavy duty machine, it's pretty much fine. Once again, you take the whole cord out and we just have a look along the entire thing. You can clean it if it's too dirty. In my case, it's just super dry. It is super dry along the entire length. So you can pull it all the way out. They are surprisingly long. Eventually, you'll get right to the end. And this is, it's got a little bit of lubrication on it, but it's pretty much dried up. Now, even when you do lubricate and you don't use the tool for a little while, it's still important that you do a bit of a lubrication and clean every now and then because it won't just wear out. It'll actually just dry out and perish. And you've got to be very careful not to kink it. You also want to make sure you're wearing gloves, or when you're doing the cleaning, don't use anything like paper towel. You want it pretty lint free. If a little bit of fur gets caught in here and there, then it's gonna be problems for you in the future. So if you ever feel your flex shaft heating up or something, this is number one. And mine, I can feel a little bit of warmth because I run it along the back of my neck. You should see at the end here that it's a little bit square. So that's to fit into the last little part of the handpiece that connects it and starts it spinning. And I said gloves because have a look at that, little bit of grease, which is a good sign. But also, if you look at the color of it, it's a little bit dark. I can replace this with white lithium grease, and I probably will, even though I'm not going to use the tool because it's still functioning. But this being the end, I'm going to go all the way back, maybe to here somewhere, and all the rest of this I'll put in the grease, chuck it back in here, hang it up, turn it on, and just let it run. And this last little part here will get coated just by it all heating up and running down. Just hang it up high enough so that the cord is nice and straight. When you're doing all of this, make sure not to kink it. That will cause issues. But once you've lubricated it, back in it goes. Make sure it gets all the way down to the bottom, and it should house quite well. In this case, with these types of tools, you don't need to worry about how much it's sticking out the bottom end. On other tools, you'll have to look at the manual and just see whether it's 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch or whatever has to stick out the bottom before it goes into the handpiece. This one, just all the way in and then rotate it around until you feel that it sits correctly in the handpiece. And then of course I am just simply reattaching that to here and screwing the outer sheath back on. And that's all you need to do for the shaft. Clean, re-grease, reassemble, job done. So we'll move on to part 2, the only other thing that I recommend doing on these types of tools. Okay, now part 2. You might have noticed your tool come with something that looks like this. It's got a spanner at one end, very easy to tell what that does. It's for the end piece here. But a lot of the time it'll have a little flat blade screwdriver. That is so you can check and replace your carbon brushes. So in this model, there's one top, there's one bottom. In essence, this is just going to make the electrical contact at the right point and the right time as the motor spins, and this will just keep it revving along. Without these, you're going to have a huge problem. Now, if you've been using your rotary tool and you've ever heard a crackle or spark or something, turn it off. Number one is going to be check your carbon brushes. They could be getting worn. One could have splintered a little bit. If little fractures go in there, you will get a lot of sparking and arcing and a lot of noise. It's pretty loud, so you'll hear it. Eventually, you might even get a huge bang, which you'll want to avoid because that could do more damage that replacing the brushes won't fix. Now, in this case, top and bottom. In the case of the pendant motors, it's typically on opposite sides as well. So these little plugs right here. So let's get one out. Now, different models are a little bit different, but you always want to be careful. And you can see I've got my fingers over the top of it as I loosen, because you might get one that is a bit like an Aussie animal, the kangaroo, and it will spring and fly. And you don't want to try to hunt and chase these things down. So this one, nicely, has a bit of a solid cap on it, which means it's pretty easier to retain it. Others can just be a single flat plate, and once it comes off, it goes absolutely flying. And if we look inside here, you can see this is the little conductor with the spring. This is a little plate with a spring. So the thing that we screwed off is pushing that on, and the spring is just making sure it's got enough pressure to contact the motor. But the important part to check is actually what goes inside the square hole. Here we go. So that's a square hole. Right through there is the little motor, and this is the little fella that's connecting. So carbon brush, literally a tiny little block of carbon on the end of a spring. And you can see the little conductor there. Now, this one has been in there for a long time, and trust me, this is getting super worn. You can see the curvature of the contact with the motor, but these are typically quite a bit longer. If you ever look at this and you want to just chuck it straight back in, just make sure you get this curvature right. You can see here from the front, it's very square hole, but the motor is rounded in this direction, so make sure the curvature of the carbon brush matches. So here you can see it is curving in that direction, so either this way or that way. And then you just want to aim it to get inside that square little hole there, and it should make the contact. If you've got a new one, you might not have a lot of curvature in there, but be careful, sometimes they do. And you might feel that it starts a little bit strangely at first, but it'll wear in and it'll be fine. So yeah, carbon brushes, the other one will look exactly the same. And when you're replacing them, replace both, don't just replace one. You typically buy them in packs of 2 anyway. And apart from that, the only other thing that you should be aware of is motors can overheat if these vent holes get covered. These you can blow out with a little bit of compressed air every now and then. Try not to get water in them, but dust can build up depending on what you're doing, so just clear those out. That's really the only other little basic thing you can do. They're really simple tools. Bit of power comes in to a motor spins, somehow it's attached to your flex shaft. And then just to recap, flex shaft, literally you've just got your inner core, you might have an outer surround, and then you've just got your external sheath. You want to make sure these are pretty clean and that they're lubricated enough, but not too much. And honestly, that is about it. It makes perfect sense, but people get scared of doing it. There's really no need. It is super simple when you think about it. And these tools are quite cheap, but you can get fairly expensive ones as well. And I want you guys to have them running as long as I've had my pretty cheap Azito here running. Less than $50, more than 5 years. And that's purely from just looking after it. So that's a wrap. Super easy. You should be able to go through this whole process in just a few minutes. And if you only do it once a year, that is perfectly fine. Once a year is okay. You can get away with longer if you use a good long life grease and you don't wear your carbon brushes too fast. They typically last a long time. So good luck, have fun. I'll piece this one back together and then put them in a box because unfortunately I don't use these anymore. You can see on my channel that I've switched over to this one here. And if you want to know why, go check out that other video. Just type in Viva or something like that and it'll come up. So good luck, have fun, and I'll see you when I'm back to carving.